Well, it's morning. It's a Friday. Doesn't matter where you look. It's flat. Just dead flat. The only thing splitting the flatness, there's two long lines of steel. That was the campsite last night. And even out here, you've got to get the boneheads who've got to write on things. Put their name on it, a little bit of history. Boneheads, that's all they are. Well, we've been up since 5:30 this morning, and we've been messing around. Just haven't been able to really get ourselves into gear this morning. It's now 8:34. We decamped a few minutes ago back at the Deakin obelisk. Now heading back to Deakin. A little building indicated the beginning of the spur line here at Deakin. As mentioned earlier, many of the rail sidings along the Trans-Australia Railway are named after former Prime Ministers of Australia. Somewhere here there's a turn off. About where that drum is, I think. And that looks like our road ahead of us. Okay, 101 as the crow flies, so probably another 10 or 15 over and above that. That camel we were talking about, I told you he was walking up the road. Why do they do that? Now he'll run along the road for bloody miles. Monday, September 21. We're here to get the shocks replaced. Toyota. This is Jamie, who's the guru.
Jackie.
He's actually the tyre guy, but he's one of these blokes and can put their...
Been around for a while.
Yeah, exactly. When you're working next to the air highway, you got to improvise, adapt and overcome a fair bit, I would have thought. This is the Cook turn off, 107. To go. Yeah, the road's unmaintained, it's not suitable for two-wheel drive. And there are no services when we get there, so let's take it easy and see what it's like. There's a dry weather road. Oh, we just crossed the Oldea Highway. I thought that would be a bit further in than that, but we're currently something like about 10 or 11 kilometres up the road from where we turned off. So far the road's not bad. We're able to slip along at around about 80 kilometres an hour. Don't know how long this will last for, of course. I haven't found it necessary to drop the tyre pressures at this point in time. Having said that, we are running alongside the dog fence. It's just running alongside us there on the right hand side. This fence extends some 5,000 or 6,000 kilometres across Australia, backwards and forwards all over the place. For a supposedly unmaintained road, this is in remarkable condition. It looks as though they've had rain through here and that it actually has been graded. Just up here should be the road back to Nullarbor across the desert. And there it is there. Goes down via a couple of caves and some rock holes. Comes out at Nullarbor Roadhouse. Back on the main road they said that the road was suitable only for four-wheel drive. It was not suitable for two-wheel drive. At the moment the two-wheel drive had no problems at all. However, it also said that it was a dry weather road, in other words a fair weather road, and there's evidence that when it gets wet it gets very, very sloppy. On the horizon there's a few trees, building, there's a tall antenna, 5 kilometres to Cook. We were told the other day that they used to land an aeroplane on this until someone built this obelisk in the middle of the thing up here. I don't know how true that is. Okay, there are 3 couples that sort of alternate, come out here and rotate looking after the place. A big new building down the end is where that houses the drivers. There are 24 drivers that come through the place and their barracks and everything down there, kitchens, lounge, all that sort of thing. The first 3 houses along the way are the couples' caretaker houses, and the next 3 are ARTC housing. There's anything up to about 12 trains a day come through the place. The Indian Pacific comes through 4 times a week at the moment, twice on Mondays and once on Wednesdays and then once on Fridays, I think it is, at this time of the year. The old hospital is gone, it's knocked over. So that basically is the story of Cook at the moment. Well, that was cooked. This is a blowhole. And it's right beside the road. This is outback signposting. This is the road to Ooldea, and we're heading up from the air highway, and we'll be interested to see how long the bitumen goes for. We've been running along a straight stretch of road for quite a little while now, and all of a sudden, twisting and winding a bit, we're starting to get into sandhill type country, which is what we're expecting, because Oldea is actually at the end of the Nullarbor. It's sandhills to the east, and it's Nullarbor to the west. Certainly the road to Oldea is a good road. It's bitumen for about 70k before you turn off, and the dirt road is good, wide, gravel, well graded, well kept road. There's a tower directly ahead of us, and that would be Oldea. So the plan now is to actually find somewhere to camp for the night. Obviously don't want to get hit by a train. So we'll now head back onto the Telstra track. It's just gone 9 o'clock and we're leaving our campsite at Oldea, and we're going to head back to have a look and see if we can find the memorial to Daisy Bates, and there's an Aboriginal grave there, and see what else we can find as well. The wind blew up quite strongly last night. I thought I was going to take the tent to Darwin, but it died down as the night went on. It was quite cosy in the tent. Tanks they're obviously for the traveller in the old days. Catch the water for the people working on the trains and that, I would think. Wooden sleepers taken up from the rail. Where did the straight line finish? Okay, and before now, because there's the corner up here. The historic meeting of the two railheads occurred here on Wednesday the 17th of October 1917. In what was a remarkable surveying and engineering feat, two construction teams, one starting from Port Augusta and the other from Kalgoorlie, met to complete the track at a point 691 kilometres from Port Augusta and 1,001 kilometres from Kalgoorlie. This was the largest stretch of railway ever built as a single project in Australia, taking 5 years to complete. Sadly, the monument celebrating this event has been allowed to fall into disrepair. The surprising part of this is the base. It's concrete. There's a couple of pieces of metal rail, but the top bit, which has fallen over here, or has been pushed over, or has fallen over in the weather, is only made of timber. I would have thought that would have been made of metal or concrete or something. Now, it has been said that I have a weird imagination, but that's towards Western Australia. The line is dead straight. Turn 180 degrees. That's looking back at South Australia. And just a few hundred metres down the road, the line actually curves. Did the South Australians get it wrong? And as all along the railway line, these little Telstra setups keep the 3G phone network running along the railway line. You may have noticed when we were rummaging around in Oldea that all of a sudden you're in sandhills. Out here, it's just a flat plain. We're only a few kilometres from Oldea at the moment. Drums, but not just drums. Drums filled with assorted bits and pieces off the rail. Piles of posts. Wonder what they were used for. They're certainly not sleepers. Well, they look like a pine type of material. I'm wondering what these are. 477.14 kilometres away at Nurina, we stood next to a sign very similar to this one. This is the end, or the beginning, depending on which direction you are travelling in, of the longest straight stretch of railway in the world. Something a little different to what we've seen elsewhere. This Telstra unit has a wind turbine operating, as well as the solar. We're approaching Watson. During the atomic testing days, this place was a strategic point. The siding was used for bringing in materials for the weapons site. It's also a reasonable sized town, I'd suggest. Maybe most of it is gone. All of it, possibly. There was a quarry here which is now well abandoned, I would think. All the housing is gone.
It's payday. There was 3,000 people in this area. Approximately 400 people down at Watson. They had a huge big construction camp down at Watson. That's where they had the bitumen factory down there, the concrete batching plants down there, the big quarry where they get all the rubble from to build everything. That was the offloading for all the fuel that come up here for the planes, for the machines and everything. One stage on the southern side of Watson was called Diesel City. They had 100,000 gallon tanks down there, fuel tanks down there for airplane fuel and for machinery, diesel and everything like that, and then it'd be put into tankers. And the trains used to bring it in. They had special crossing loops down there and offloading lines and everything, whereas a normal little railway siding would have your main line and a crossing loop. Well, they had 5 of them down there because trains are shunting in and out all the time with machinery and fuel, just different odds and ends and that. Everything came into what they couldn't fly in here came by rail and then trucked up to here, sort of.
Here, very definitely, a cement base for a building. It's a bit scary to think that when they were setting up for the atomic tests, that the actual bomb warhead was probably transported along this road from rail. And again, how did they travel with it on rail? All sorts of questions to be answered, I suppose. And now suddenly we're into the Sandhill area. So we're approaching the gate, which Robin is standing beside the gate there. He's actually opened it for us. So we have a convoy of 3. During the Cold War, the British were keen to develop nuclear weapons of its own. The Maralinga area in South Australia, along with Emu Field and the Montebello Islands, was used by the British government for nuclear weapons development tests between 1952 and 1963. The operation was a secret agreement between the British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and Australian Prime Minister Robert Menzies, who was reportedly only too pleased to assist the motherland. 2 nuclear devices were detonated at Emu and 7 at Maralinga. Maralinga was officially closed following a clean-up operation in 1967. Between 1984 and 1985, the Australian government established a Royal Commission into the British nuclear test in Australia. The Royal Commission report, delivered in 1985, found that significant radiological hazards remained at many of the Maralinga test sites. In response to the Royal Commission's recommendations, a $108 million rehabilitation project was successfully implemented between 1995 and 2000 to rehabilitate the former nuclear test sites at Maralinga. In 2009, the test site land was returned to the traditional owners, the Maralinga Jaruja people. In 1993, Ian Anderson wrote in Scientific American magazine that Britain knew in the 1960s that radioactivity at its former nuclear test site in Australia was worse than first thought, but it did not tell the Australians. UK servicemen, Australian soldiers and civilians, including Indigenous people, were all exposed to radiation. Illnesses reportedly included cancer, blood diseases, eye problems, skin rashes, blindness, vomiting, which are all symptoms of radioactive poisoning. Maralinga village and its surrounds housed around 3,000 personnel in its heyday. Servicemen stayed for a term of 6 months at a time, and they were sworn to secrecy about their form of employment. Most of the buildings have been removed. The former hospital is now an office and residence for the manager. The campground was under construction during our trip. There is a shed which houses 2 shower ablution blocks, a sink and washing machine. There is Wi-Fi available and Telstra phone reception at the site of the former swimming pool. A campfire and barbecue pit completed the facility. We were free to move around the village, but were not allowed to travel unaccompanied to any outlying areas. There was no need to. The tour conducted by Robin Matthews was something to look forward to, and it didn't disappoint. We're on the Maralinga tour. Normally Robin would do this in a bus.
This little area we've just gone through in our lorry, Brett, is what we call the halfway tank. I pump water up from the dam to that big tank, and from there another pump goes on and we pump from there to the village. But this area here with the sheoak trees and that around, this is called Sheoak Ridge. This is the original site that Len Bedell picked for Maralinga village at the time. And he decided to pick this spot because he put a bore down, he had poured potable water here
Yeah, so because of the arrangements with just the four of us, rather than take a 24-seater bus out, we suggested that, seeing as how with the car with the cameras and all that sort of thing on board, that Robin would take the other couple out in the ute, and Brett and I would follow in our cars, and we would do a tour that way. So we're working on UHF.
We've got some queries for October, but we haven't got any permanent bookings for October, so I think people are realising that they're not clean the storm water drains out now. And you've got to rescue the little mountain devils and the little lizards and that. They're in the...
This is where the Air Force lived down here in the 50s and 60s. They did not live at Maralinga village. They had their own mess huts down here, Shap. And the Navy lived 2 kilometres north. This is the Maralinga Airport Terminal. This was the original building that was here in the 50s.
This building here, all aluminium, flown direct from England, the aluminium. And like I said, they had influx of aluminium left over from the Bristol airplane factories in England, and that everything was brought out here because it was light to transport, but also aluminium takes a long time to rust, and there is very, very little rust in 60 years after this building here. Still doesn't leak rain. Everything holds up beautiful. Apart from the windows that are cracking. Now that's only from the extreme heat, and that's not bad after 60 years anyway.
Absolutely.
You make its way down to the channel. So every little bit of water that lands on that parking bay over 5 mil ends up in the viaducts and channels and that.
It's the strongest airstrip surface in Australia, and indeed was the only airstrip in Australia rated for the space shuttle. So this was, if the space shuttle had to come down in Aussie, this is where it was going to come down. Of course it never did. The RAF still use it occasionally on exercises, and in fact on October 13 and 14 they're here doing such things.
2.4 k's of bitumen with a 600 metre offshoot either end.
This is roadside.
What they called roadside village. There were 400 people lived here. Went approximately half a k that way and a half a k that way. And all the buildings that were out here have all been demolished, and that, as you can see by the observation towers, they blew them up and everything, tipped them over, and they've cut them all up. Well, they were all buried in burial pits. Well, you know, Aboriginal people aren't anything, they're not citizens and that. So we'll be right. We'll make.
So that's where we are now.
But then they wanted a spot where they had good vantage points. Well, you know, you look over that way, there you can see 25 k's.
This is all in front of us up here. To the north, that's where all the detonations took place. We're about to go up and have a look. This is Deakin's #1 well from 1879. Deakin's came through here with Ernest Giles in 1874, and he came back and he sunk this well to 26 metres and another one 15 kilometres away to 27 metres. And down there, it's a kestrel falcon nest. There's 5 eggs. Good spot for it, eh? Anyway, the falcon's normally here, but not this morning. We'll check later. Anyway, Deakin didn't find water here or in his other well, but in 1954, only 6 kilometres away, Len Bedell sunk a bore 3 metres down. He discovered water, pristine drinking water. The only drinkable water in the whole of the 115,000 square kilometres of Maralinga.
So it means inside the boundary signs there was radiation years ago. but the meat, the googa, that's balya. So the meat is good. Balya, googa balya, that meat, kangaroo there is good meat. You can shoot that maroo there, that's what they call the kangaroo maroo. You can shoot that inside the boundary area, no worries. But no camping. Don't make a fire, and you're aware, don't make a fire there and cook the googa in the ground inside where the radiation was.
This is the decontamination shed. Sunken floor with a ramp. Yep. Men used to, with their space suits used to work in here. Not a very technical way of explaining it, is there?
You can see the big mound of dirt up there. Well, it's a smaller version of this burial pit here. That's what they call the Taranaki debris pit. And that's got all the Feast Brothers machinery buried up there. Every bit of machinery that Feast Brothers used in a radioactive area is buried up on that hill up there. And there's scrapers and dozers and excavators and loaders and big water cannon trucks. 72 Toyotas buried up in there. Big $250,000 generators buried up in there. Huge amount of money buried in that hill up there. Oof. But just to be safe, they buried them up there 40 foot deep. Just to be safe, to make sure that nobody would go tampering with the gear, they made themselves a big pad in the pit when they drove down in. Something like a big parking area, and they parked all the machinery and all the Toyotas and that in there. And then they got the D11, and he came in, and he started walking over the top of everything. And the Toyotas went from that eye down to that eye. He crushed everything. He drove over the top of the machines and crushed all the cabs and stuff like that to make sure that nobody would think about digging it up. Plus, before they got the D11 in, the mechanics went underneath and done all the sump plugs and drained all the oils and just left the motors running, cooked all the motors at the same time. So you had all the machinery, the motors were buggered in, but then you had also the machinery where the cabs had been crushed down, so it wasn't worth trying anybody digging it up. Now, to be honest, nobody's going to dig down 40 feet to get anything like that. This is what they call the Taranaki burial pit. This has got 400,000 cubic metres of plutonium dirt buried in there, with 45 feet of clean floor sitting on top of it. So that's safe, don't worry about that, because the world's best practice at the time of burying plutonium was put 5 metres of clean fill over the top of it. Well, they put 15 metres, so they went 3 times much again, just to be safe.
Danny's got his Geiger counter out again.
I'm curious to see what he gets here.
You can see the decontamination and mechanical workshops over there, and of course right near there-ish is the previous Tanaki, the previous bomb. This one's just here, breakaway, and then right through in the distance you can see the plinth for the next one. So they're all in a row.
That reflective stuff is
That is the molten ground.
molten ground.
Yes.
Right.
When the bomb went off, 3/4 of a kilometre, just turned everything to molten glass. And now it is reverting back to soil again. But the plants, you have a look at this salt bush. You have a look at that. Well, that salt bush there is still green inside. You can see it. It's actually still quite lush inside. But when it gets to 12 inches high, that's part of the salt bush, it's dead. It dries off. So it's as if it gets say 12 inches deep and then runs out of nutrients to grow any higher, and it dies off. Every little bit of it. This is 59 years of regrowth here.
smile, Beth?
Yeah.
Have it for the camera.
Oh, it's hard to look at the light.
You see the little piece on the end there? Exactly look like the head. Well, that's a false head. So when the birds come along and they sense a danger, she puts the head right down. That sticks up.
And they get...
The bird pecks that, falls off.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll grow another one.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But she is heavily pregnant. Lemondale, that's not Lemondale style for a start.
No.
He did not do that.
Missing a little goanna.
Yeah, that's right.
For a start.
What it was done by a cook in the officer's mess. And you see the chap on the end there serving the alcohol. Well, he's the barman. Then you had your Navy there, because there's 3 services here. You had your Navy drinking plonk, you had your Army drinking beer, and the Air Force drinking champagne. So as the hierarchy went up in that era, the style of drinks went up. The bloke there with the yellow hat and dark glasses cigarette, well, he's supposedly a Russian spy. And he's whispering to the SP bookmaker, because the SP bookmaker knew everything out here for information. The big stern chap next to him, well, he's a Commonwealth policeman. The little bloke there with the halo and the scout uniform, that's Len Liddell. Len was a teetotaler, and he started his surveying life as a scout. His scout leader used to take him out and teach him the stars at night time and things like that. Then you had your priest for all denominations here, only one priest. And then the other chap on the end drinking, he's the bar manager. Bar manager never worked. He drank with the clientele. And the British Bulldog and the Australian Mountain Devil. I think that's quite good. It's a real 50, well, that's 62 years old, that baby.
Time to depart Maralinga. Thanks, Robin. Difference from the road from Watson to Maralinga, which is bitumen. The road to Oldea is gravel. The Maralinga lands had been lived in, hunted in and cared for by the Anangu people for thousands of years. The land was their life. They knew all of its secrets and they taught those secrets to their children and their children's children. In 1917, the railway came through their land. Many had never seen a white man before, let alone the puffing steel monster that traversed their land. They came in contact with a white man who introduced them to tobacco, tea, sugar, white flour and alcohol. The women liked the flour, it was easier than making their own, and the men liked the guns, which made hunting easier. For payment, the white men took advantage of the women, and before long, children from white fathers were being born. The previously independent hunters and gatherers were gradually changing their healthy, self-sufficient lifestyle. Daisy Bates became concerned with the effects the railway was having on the Anangu, and in 1915 she set up camp between Oldea Soak and the Oldea siding, hoping to keep the people away from the influences that were destroying them, and to care for the Anangu inflicted with whitefella diseases. She stayed until 1935 and left when the Oldea mission was established at Oldea Soak. sandhill country, just to the north of the railway line. We're looking for the Oldea soak, which is a significant, if sad, part of the history around here. It was the only water, basically the Aboriginals, the indigenous people used to, was their only water source for centuries, and more than that, more than centuries. And when the white man came, they put a well in, basically, and drained it dry, drained all the water out, and by the 1920s it was all gone. But the soak is the reason why Oldea was a community in the first place, for white settlement. So anyway, the railway line then came through in 1917, obviously it's where it joined up, but the soak itself is 6 kilometres north, we're told, 6.5 kilometres north of the rail line, so we will see, well, what's left of the soak, shall we say. Well, we believe this is where the soak was. There's no evidence of it anymore. There was dwellings and all sorts of things there.
In there is the Ooldea well. It was a soak that for 40,000 years provided an endless supply of water until the railways came along and decided they could use that water for the trains, and they bled the thing dry. Well, firstly, the water became so brackish it couldn't be used, and then they basically bled it dry.
In contrast to Daisy Bates' ambition to help the Anangu retain their culture and lifestyle, the mission encouraged the Anangu to stay at the soak and receive rations, and thus become dependent on the mission. Men were taught to work for a living, and the women were taught to wash and iron clothes, to sew, knit and crochet. There was not enough work for all of the men, and some were sent to stations further east, where many were exploited and abused. By the late 40s, permanent occupation had damaged beyond repair the fragile desert around the soak. The water flow from a once permanent supply was now decreasing. The mission closed in 1952 and its occupants sent to other locations. Then came the atomic weapons testing program.
Bit of a drive to get in here. Very enjoyable drive. But this is where all the local Aboriginal population used to meet, come into the soak, drink. That was until the white man completely stuffed it up for them.
We're back at Oldea, and time to air up the tyres again. Maybe have some lunch, and then on our way. Well, we're back on the Telstra access road again, and we haven't been along this section before. This is leaving Oldea and travelling east. We've got about a 35 kilometre section, I believe, a bit like this. Then I've been informed that it improves after that. We shall see. The railway line as far as Oldea crossed the Nullarbor plain. And once it reached Oldea was right on the edge of the sandhills. There were plenty of challenges putting the railway line across the Nullarbor, but equally there would have been plenty of challenges digging through and following the railway line through the sandhills too. Because while the road can go up and over, the train has to go straight through, of course. Yeah, well, this is very different, definitely sandhill country. We're up and over a sandhill, and
up and then down the other side, then up the next one, down the other side. The train line they've built up. So that basically it runs through, they've only got to pull a piece out of the sandhill. Very different to what we've been travelling over the last week. Shot with the railway line down the bottom, and then smaller sandhills from here on in for a little while by the looks of things. Running into a martyr, the road has suddenly changed. Must have had some weather or something through here because there's been a fair bit of damage to the roads. There right alongside of us is the Union Pacific. Earlier on we were travelling over the sandhills and sand dunes. At the moment we're travelling parallel to them. In fact, we're running into a little bit of clear ground at the moment. There's some parts of the road that are really quite rough. It's almost as though they've thrown some limestone and stuff on it. Try and firm it up a bit, I guess. But it makes it a bit uncomfortable to drive on at times. Of course, it needs to be remembered this is a maintenance road. It's not designed for the general public to drive upon. Now this is interesting, this place is not marked on the map, but it's the extra wide gauge rail here, and I'm wondering whether in actual fact there might have been a change of gauge at some stage for the spur lines. So there's definitely a spur line here on the change trains to overtake. We're wondering where we are, and just through the trees over there, Bates. So I assume the Bates is named after our friend Daisy. But, nothing there any longer other than a slip rail and some old slips. It appears that derailments in the vicinity of Bates are not a rare occurrence. A train derailed on Sunday the 9th of November 2003 as it was passing through Bates. The derailment was limited to one wagon when a roller bearing unit on the wagon had progressively deteriorated to a point where it seized, causing the axle to separate. It was Sunday the 10th of June 2007 when a westbound freight train derailed at the 716.7 kilometre mark between Bates and Barton. There were no injuries as a result of the derailment, however there was significant damage to the track and rolling stock. Of 10 wagons that separated from the train, 4 overturned. And on the 19th of April 2008, a freight train travelling from Perth to Sydney derailed about 13 kilometres east of Bates. 13 wagons were derailed and about 800 metres of track was damaged. There were no injuries. That's 22 kilometres from Barton siding.
Barton was the home of the somewhat eccentric Ziggy, a retired fettler of European heritage who had built himself a shanty out of old sleepers and other scrap at Mount Christie. But as the train no longer stopped there, he had moved the house 10 sleepers at a time on his wheelbarrow to Barton, 55 kilometres away, believe it or not. Maybe he had a little railway help. He confided to a colleague that he could no longer shift 10 sleepers on the barrow. He was fit enough, but the wheel bearing had collapsed. I'd been keen to see his shanty firsthand, having first caught a glimpse of it as we passed it on the train in 2007. However, it was not to be. Ziggy had died in 2008 and his shanty was cleared away by the authorities. Another piece of folklore and history gone.
Well, we're looking for the remains of Ziggy's castle. We've been told there's absolutely nothing left here, but at the same time we thought, well, we'll just have a look. See more sign of life here than we have anywhere else on the Triple and Railway line. Christie Station. This is Mount Christie siding. Again, that's basically a little more than a spur line. So Mount Christie. And again, like Bates. Lots of spur lines and everything happening everywhere. This morning we saw Daisy Bates camp at Ooldea. We're just approaching Wynbring, and Wynbring is where she had another camp later. As has been the case all trip, Brett has been the chef. And he's doing an amazing job.
Good old T-bone steak.
He's got T-bone steak and I've got T-bone sausages.
Yeah, not quite, but that'll do.
So he's put some other goo in there that I've never heard of before. So that's going to be an interesting evening's meal.
You've never heard of what before?
That's why I took you into the Sandhills this morning. To give you inspiration. It's morning, day 15, and we're at Wynbring. And this is Daisy Bates Wynbring camp. Sun's just rising and another beautiful day by the looks of things. And we're parked right beside this old T-model, I think it is, or something. Someone's tried some repairs and obviously we're very good at it, because while they were doing it, the vehicle obviously disintegrated at the same time they were doing the repairs, or attempting them. There you went for a 4-cylinder side valve block. Beautiful morning. Day 26, Saturday, and we're leaving Daisy Bates camp at Wynbring. The next major target today is Tarcoola. That's 100 kilometres away. Just running along the railway line. The railway line is probably about 80 metres to the right of us there. Fairly open country this morning. We're approaching Lyons and we're currently running alongside the dog fence. Mind you, that's been in place since before Wynbring. It's been a bit further back off the road, I think. In the main, these roads over here aren't too bad. They certainly don't treat the ARTC staff with decent roads over in the west, that's for sure. Different country, of course. I don't think they even graded over there. Back with the fence line again. Since Lyon, the access road is a public road, public access. We are joined from the south by Googe Track, just up the road here. And for a while, the railway line road, the access road, becomes part of Googe Track. This is Googe Track coming in from the south. As all outback areas, these access routes and tracks have their signs at the front warning you that it's a four-wheel drive access area. It's a remote area. Make sure that you have adequate food and all that sort of stuff. That's the start or the end, depending which way you're travelling, of Googe Track. Here's the barrier for the dog fence, just a few hundred metres down the road from Googe Track. This is Woldea Station. We're approaching Tarcoola.
I'm surprised their train sign is supplied now.
Yeah, it's been a while since it's been used, isn't it? Just going to go and have a look at that railway line where it comes across. And we're almost at Tarcoola. One would think that the railway is no longer in use. There's a bit of railway line. Here's the GAN. This is Tarcoola. This is the ghost town of Tarcoola.
Tarcoola is 416 kilometres north-northwest of Port Augusta. At the 2006 census, The Tarcoola district had a population of 38. The Tarcoola goldfield was discovered in 1893. It was in an isolated arid area and there was little development until 1900. A post office opened on the 18th of August 1900 and the town was proclaimed on the 21st of February 1901. The town was named after Tarcoola, the winner of the 1893 Melbourne Cup horse race. Goldfield's heyday was from about 1901 to 1918. A government battery was built to process ore from small mines. Between 1901 and 1954, the field produced about 77,000 ounces of gold, most of it from the Tarcoola Blocks mine. The Trans-Australian Railway was built through Tarcoola in 1915, and in 2004, the Adelaide-Darwin Railway diverged from Tarcoola to Darwin. The town is almost completely deserted today, except for transient railway maintenance staff and geological exploration teams. The original Tarcoola goldfields are long closed. However, there is now new exploration for minerals in the wider area, including the Challenger mine. Tarcoola is now best known as a junction of the Sydney, Perth and Adelaide-Darwin railways. The GAN and the Indian Pacific passenger services through Tarcoola both run once per week in each direction all year round and twice per week at various times. The mail for Tarcoola arrives by train.
Another town that becomes just another place on the map. Okay, the usual outback signs for South Australia: road restrictions, road conditions. The road to Glendambo is open, the road to Wirrala is open, and Tarcoola to the Stuart Highway is open. We've now deviated away from the railway line, going around a lake, probably a salt lake, probably dried up, and going around behind Woolgana siding. Woolgina siding. We've worked our way back, we hope, we're working our way back onto the road along the railway line. Doesn't look as though there's much of a road here though. Yeah, well, there's a spur line here as well. Heap of old sleepers along here. So I don't know where this one's come from. No mate, I don't know where that one's actually come up off of because there's no markings of it, but it does show that that there is a crossing there. This is part of probably the old Tarcoola Road. Again, we cross over the line. So the road twists around the top of a salt lake here. Imagine in the winter time, it's a bit difficult to do this. Or when the lake is flooded. Road to the left goes to Cooper Pedy. And this is Kingoonya. And there's signs of life here. Looks like the pub's open.
Kingoonya was established in the early 1900s as a railway support town on the line extending west and played a significant role in the construction of the Trans-Australian Railway. The abundant high-quality underground water made it a vital stop for the steam trains to refill. The Kingoonya post office first opened around 1884, closed in 1892, reopened in 1915 after the arrival of the railway, and closed again in 1982. Kingoonya was also a key point along the old Stuart Highway to Alice Springs, offering services to road-weary travellers. When railway services were rationalised in the early 1990s and the Stuart Highway was realigned 40 kilometres to the east, Kingoonya was almost abandoned. The houses in the township are only intermittently occupied by people involved in mining, exploration and kangaroo shooting. Until its demise, the town relied on the tea and sugar train for the provision of supplies. The Indian Pacific and GAN still call it Kingoonya on request and to do the twice-weekly mail run. Both trains service the town twice a week in each direction. The township is reputed to have the widest main street in Australia and cricket matches have been played on it. Kingoonya offers free camping near the railway line and you can get food, fuel and accommodation at the Kingoonya Hotel. While the road is generally in good condition, you should check it in case of local flooding before proceeding. It currently has a population of 13.
So that was Kingoonya. Next stop, Glendambo. We're getting to the eastern end of our trip. We're approaching the Stuart Highway. We've left the railway line, or the railway line has left us. This is South Australian country, South Australian outback. And there's an old building there. South Australia, they built most of the buildings with stone. So the remains hang around. And we have reached the Stuart Highway. So that's the end of the gravel stretch. Boulder to Glendambo. Bit of a break in the middle. Still plenty of gravel in that area as well. Well, that's been the other vehicle that's been travelling with us. Been the second car, so to speak. We're going to have a quick look at Glendambo just for the heck of it.
Just getting a shot of the Glendambo sign.
This is the first time we've seen other tourists since, basically since we left. There's the hotel motel. camping park. And Woodies. Okay, it's Glendambo. Pimba's the next stop, 113. This is just 10 kilometres south of Glendambo. It's almost like the Nullarbor again. This is not a natural hill. This is the road going over the railway line. Railway line running off into the distance. There's for the Nullarbor plain, 22 kilometres from Glendambo, a totally different vegetation mix. Coming up to Pimba.
Pimba, for us Len Bedell fans, man that built all the desert tracks. This is one of his significant depots. The Andamuka Opal Fields are up ahead. South Australia mines a lot of opals, has done over the years anyway. Spuds Shell Roadhouse. Yep.
Go and have a look, see what it's about.
Absolutely.
We're going to head out to Woomera, see what's out there, see if there's any sort of accommodation out there at all. And we cross the railway line. This is Woomera. Sunday morning.
The population of Woomera is about 136 permanent residents. However, this number can quadruple with the passage of personnel moving in and out of the base as part of range trials activities. Woomera is open to the visiting public. Non-defence visitors to Woomera are able to stay at the Eldo Hotel, which offers 400 beds in varying range of formats. The hotel reception, including the Oasis bar and restaurant, is located in the former Eldo administration facility. The nearby Travellers Village Caravan Park is a privately operated venture centred around the old Senior Ranks Mess facility at the entrance to the base from the main road. It mostly services the motorhome and backpacker travellers passing through Woomera. Woomera's attractions include the Woomera National Aerospace and Missile Park, located in the centre of the village. The Woomera Heritage Centre, which was the former recreation centre for USAF personnel and their families from Narranga, features a cafe, a 10-pin bowling alley, a modern interactive display and interpretive centre covering the full life of the range, a souvenir shop and a significant display of regional history. This display also features the story of the legendary Len Bedell, the famous surveyor who laid out the original range across the vast tracts of the Australian outback stretching from Woomera to the northwest coast of Western Australia. Next to Missile Park there is a museum featuring range artefacts and the activities and people who lived and worked at Woomera in the early years. This museum is located in one of 4 former churches which existed in Woomera. Other attractions include a movie theatre, swimming centre, a well-stocked general store and a bottle shop, along with 2 main clubs which offer counter meals on a Thursday, the RSL Club, and Friday, the Sports Club. Woomera is a haven for observing and understanding Australia's desert flora and fauna, and there is an observatory which operates 1 night a week or by appointment.
There's the marker. This is where the first peg was put. And then Bedell decided this is where Woomera was going to be. This is the Roxby down the road. And, just down the road is the cemetery on the right hand side and the Len Bedell Memorial. It appears. This is the memorial for Len Bedell at Woomera. Right, what do they say in the song? If it wasn't for bad luck, we'd have no luck at all. Brett's had a bolt snap in the alternator tensioner area. Same problem that I had before we started the trip. He's got it at the end of the trip, so thank goodness it happened here and not anywhere else. Fortunately, there's a mechanic in town. He's come out to have a look at it, and we're just drifting back to his workshop now, and hopefully we can get things sorted by this afternoon, but it could have happened anywhere. If the bolt had slipped any further than what it had, it would have taken his fan belts off for sure, and that would have been disastrous. He would have had a lot of my dust, as I told him. I'd suggest. Alright, finally on the road to Port Augusta. Wow, what a view. And out the windscreen as well. This is just a gorgeous piece of road along here. The railway line is running to the west of us. After cutting it from Kalgoorlie, we've finally put the 40 litres of spare stuff into the tank from the roof, because we just weren't going to make it that extra 104 kilometres. Flinders Ranges. Looking over there towards Paranchelna and Hawker. And I think the Gawler Range is down there. Is that the Gawler Ranges down there?
Yeah.
Nice views out there of the Flinders Ranges. This is an enjoyable road to drive along. First time I've done it down this end of the world. Really nice.
Port Augusta is a seaport and railway junction city located 322 kilometres north of the state capital Adelaide. It is a natural harbour which was founded on the 24th of May 1852. In 1878, the town became the southern terminus of a proposed north-south transcontinental line headed for Darwin. In 1929, it was extended to its last terminus at Alice Springs. Between 1913 and 1917, the Trans-Australian Railway was built from Port Augusta to Kalgoorlie in Western Australia. This was built to standard gauge as part of a long-term plan to harmonise gauges between the mainland states. The standard gauge Adelaide-Darwin Railway was finally completed in 2003. The beginnings of the Trans-Australian Railway were steeped in controversial decisions by the government of the day. How different it could have been if engineer Henry Dean's original vision of using diesel-powered engines had been realised. He got as far as making inquiries with potential manufacturers. Unfortunately, a scandal involving the supply of sleepers led to Dean's resignation before the diesel locomotive proposal had advanced beyond the point of no return. The final distance was 1,692.6 kilometres, slightly less than the original survey. At no point along the route does the line cross a permanent fresh watercourse. Bores and reservoirs were established at intervals, but the water was often brackish and unsuitable for steam locomotive use, let alone human consumption, so water supplies had to be carried on the train. In the days of steam locomotion, about half of the total load was water for the engine. Regardless, this was certainly an amazing feat of engineering for its time. According to Adelaide-born astronaut Andy Thomas, the line is identifiable from space because of its unnatural straightness. It's a very fine line. It's like someone who's drawn a very fine pencil line across the desert, he has said.